All right, beautiful people. Y'all know the drill. JV Wins, Dogon SS. We are back for another edition of the Conscious Approach podcast on YouTube. Major shouts out to everybody tuning in as always. We certainly appreciate the engagement and the participation and the viewing of everyone who has decided that our content and commentary is worthy of your attention. We certainly appreciate it, and we do not take it for granted, not in the slightest. So yeah, as always, man, JV Wins, Dogon SS. We are back once again, April the 22nd, 2025. Hope everyone out there is having a glorious start to their week. Before we get things kicked off, I want to say check us out on Spotify, check us out on Apple Podcasts, check us out on Amazon Music. Just search Conscious Approach. That is where you can find us. If you are, not in position to view us on YouTube, to watch the videos, you're driving in the car, hitting it at the gym, wherever you are, but you don't really want to watch videos, head over to those various outlets, pop the headphones in, check us out audio style. Just want to be available to everyone in any way possible. If this is your first time checking us out, be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, leave a comment, let us know what you think, because we do not try to create a cult here. We don't care if you disagree with us. In fact, we welcome it. The only thing that we ask is that you are constructive with your feedback. Feedback of the troll variety is not practical. Therefore, we will, in all likelihood, ignore it. Also, one last thing before we get started. We are also now available. We are not also now accessible on TikTok. So check us out on TikTok at ConApproach, ConApproach, just like the Instagram page. Although we will probably be far more active on TikTok because TikTok is just a more user-friendly platform for what we like to do. Instagram isn't very good with long-form video content. So, if you want to check us out on the social channels and you're not really all that active on YouTube, head on over to TikTok. Check us out at ConApproach. Follow us there and engage with the content there. We certainly appreciate you. Now, of course, with that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and get things kicked off with the proceedings this evening. First thing that we are going to get into is Tracee Ellis Ross. Tracee Ellis Ross, OG in the game, goes all the way back to the 90s. She goes all the way back to the UPN days for any of my millennials out there who even know what UPN is. First time that I even learned of who this woman was on that TV show Girlfriends on UPN. Forget how long it lasted, but I believe it started in the late 90s, but I could be wrong. Late 90s, early 2000s, something like that. And she was on another show, what's the name of that show?
Oh, Blackish.
What is it again?
Blackish.
There you go. Blackish. Yeah. So she was on that show, and reason why she's gone viral recently is because she was on the great Michelle Obama's podcast. And they got and they started talking about personal stuff, and they got into her relationship preferences, and she divulged a little bit into her mindset on why it is that she chooses to date younger men over men her own age, citing older men who harbor toxic masculinity. She says she prefers to date younger men because men her age are on that toxic masculinity stuff. She's been there and done that. She's not interested in it anymore. And so aside from the physical allure of dating men who are younger, apparently, according to her, younger men are also not toxically masculine. So let's hear from Miss Ellis Ross, and we'll give our opinions, of course, on what it is that she had to say.
I mean, and a lot of it is because
let's stop on that, folks.
Oh my God, we had a great dinner. We had a great dinner, by the way, where across the table, your husband goes, "But why?" And I said, "Well, maybe because I can."
Yes, This is what I'm saying. Tales from Tracee's.
It's fun. It's very fun to share.
Tracee tale.
But
you I'm sorry.
But one of the reasons, though, that because I had to ask myself that question, I was like, "What is this about?" because I want a partner. And so often, and it's not just that I'm older, I'm also very embodied. I am a full, very whole person who knows myself, who is in charge of my life, and who lives a very full, just robust life. So it's not just age, it's like life experience and sort of a difference. But I had to ask myself the question, why? Why does this keep sort of coming up other than they're hot and gorgeous? There's that. But a lot of men my age are steeped in a toxic masculinity and have been raised in a culture where there is a particular way that a relationship looks. And anything that starts to smell of that for me, I did enough of it where I was controlled and felt like I was a possession or whatever those things were, or prize I have no interest in it, and I will not do it again.
Will not do it again.
Jesus.
So there you go. I don't know, Michelle Obama. I guess she's really trying to.
What's she doing, bro?
I don't know. Is she trying to like do the modern woman manifesto thing? I don't really know. You know what that particular piece of it is, but I digress, man. But yeah, Tracee Ellis Ross, man, older men, toxic masculinity. And that's why she dates younger men. What do you think about that?
To me, this sounds like a bunch of hogwash. It didn't make any sense. I mean, it makes sense on one hand, but the one hand that it makes sense on is the same hand that that women get so upset about with men. Not wanting to date women their age because they have a form of toxic femininity, all right? So they don't want to date them because they're stuck in their ways, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. So they want to go get something younger. But then, of course, people get hollering from the rooftop, from the rafters, all right? Hollering that you're taking advantage of somebody that doesn't know better, that doesn't know who they are, aren't standing on any principles, so you can just run roughshod on them. Well, this sounds like the same handbook. Apparently the older men are stuck in their ways, but they're stuck in a form of toxic masculinity. So she would rather deal with a younger person who may not be firm on their stances, may not be, standing on business for themselves. Therefore, she has the ability to control the situation instead of being controlled, because that's what it sounds like to me. So this sounds like a robust woman wanting to live a robust lifestyle, and live it over somebody, and I gotta tell you, man, I don't even know what that means as far as the whole toxic masculinity thing. I mean, I guess I get what she's getting at, but as far as I'm concerned, I would also argue if there's a younger man who is, a man, he would also display forms of toxic masculinity. Last thing I'll say is that man that was sitting at the table, okay, he was an older man, and he seems to not be exhibiting toxic masculinity. In fact, he seems to be of the soy variety. So what's stopping Tracee from dating a guy like him? That's her own age, because there's men that are soy that are her age. So to me, I'll holler cap on this. I'm not buying it. She just wants to be worshipped and praised. And a younger man to do that. Older man will know what she's worth and know that she ain't worth the time. But a younger person in his naivete would worship her in a sense because she has this status and robust lifestyle. Not buying a cap. She can take her ego somewhere else and shove it. But what are your thoughts, man, on Miss Tracee Ellis Ross around here on the Obama podcast of all things, saying that, hey, she can't deal with older men because they're too crusty and stuck in their own toxic masculinity ways. What are your thoughts, bro?
Yeah, the show kind of stops short of asking her to qualify what she means by toxic masculinity. So that contextualization is required, I believe, when a person makes comments like that. Because if what she is describing is a traditional family structure in which the participants in the relationship have clearly defined roles that they have to adhere to, and it's a man who believes in the notion of traditional gender roles, that to me is not toxic masculinity. That is traditionalism. But I think nowadays traditionalism is being conflated with toxicity inherently.
Yeah.
And you and I have talked about that on several videos in the past. There's this propensity on the part of people who just want to rail against the patriarchy and rail against masculinity in general. They want to coalesce all aspects of masculinity under the toxic umbrella when that is simply not true. There is a difference, there is a delineation between toxic masculinity and traditional true masculinity. And most men who are traditionally masculine, I would suggest, especially those whom are older, adhere to traditional gender roles within the structure of a relationship. And they would prefer that their partner also be willing to adhere and to submit to those roles. Because in any sort of interpersonal dynamic, everyone must adhere to a role. Otherwise, the relationship is completely in flux and always in a state of chaos. The only way for it to be stable is if the individuals adhere to their roles, the roles that work best given what they bring to the table, thereby creating a functional situation. But if in her mind that means toxic, then you got me there. My problem would be, is that what she means by toxic? Is she conflating traditionalism with toxicity? And I don't know her past, I don't know her personal history, but there's a tendency for people who talk like that, I have found, to really be saying, I have a problem with traditionalism. Traditionalism is what is toxic. And so what they'll do is they'll conflate all of it under the sun. So if you're masculine in any kind of way, because what they want to do is create a narrative in which being masculine is inherently toxic.
Yes.
So and I bring up examples such as evildoers in the world. People like Epstein, the Diddler, Kevin Spacey, Weinstein. So these individuals who are, in my opinion, evildoers in the world, because they are all men, that gets lumped underneath the umbrella as a case study for why masculinity is inherently toxic. Because the idea is no one who balks at the notion of toxicity of masculinity would ever live such a life. That is a form of toxic. That is a form of that is masculinity in itself. That kind of behavior is in and of itself masculinity, and therefore masculinity in a complete vacuum is inherently toxic. They're not even doing their due diligence to separate the two. And I have news for people like that. I was raised by a masculine father. He's not toxic. I have many men in my family who are decent, good, law-abiding, respectful family men who don't subjugate their women. They're very much masculine and they're not toxic. But this ridiculous conflation of toxicity and masculinity is, in my opinion, the crux of this particular issue.
Yeah.
And I think for her to speak like that, in my opinion, it reveals how she, throughout her life, may have not done the very best job of vetting and choosing her own partners. Okay. And when someone does not do a very good job of vetting and choosing their own partners, there is a propensity for those individuals to perhaps enter into toxic setups because they can't tell the difference between what is toxic and what is not. And when your pathology is to repeat that process over and over again, you end up essentially lambasting the entire situation and saying, well, I don't like dealing with men of a certain age because they're all toxic. Maybe you just suck at picking people. And so now it becomes easier to deal with younger men because younger men likely don't know who they are, juxtaposed to older men. I don't really think this is about masculinity or lack thereof. I think it's about toxicity. And there is a difference between the two. But I think for people who can't tell the difference, they have a tendency to conflate everything and equate masculinity with toxicity. And that is what I take issue with.
Yeah, I think this is a classic case of dangerous rhetoric. Her going around, and yeah, it would have been nice if she qualified it, but of course she did not. But as you mentioned, there's this blanket umbrella thing going on as if the man's being man, then automatically he's being toxic. And the crazy part about it is that we have been taught a form of. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that the masculinity that was provided to us on television and forms of media is the appropriate form, because no, that is not how masculinity goes. Okay. But at the same time, not like you mentioned, there's men that you know in your life, there's men that I know in my life that are being man. They're not acting like the men on TV. And so therefore, they're practicing healthy forms of masculinity. Traditionally, what went on in the world before, we were, brainwashed as the people. There were healthy forms of masculinity where the men did what men do. And then there was healthy forms of femininity where women did what they supposed to do. And a woman, for instance, could still have a robust lifestyle and still do what women are supposed to do. Like, for instance, traditionally, women would have high roles in society. I'm speaking African. We would have high roles in society. They would be the doctors, the oracles, or the what have yous. All right. Hell, even the leader of the people in some cases. All right. But even though they were doing these things, they still did traditionally what women do, because women, although they can do one thing, they can also do others, and they can still do what their job is. And on the flip side of that, while a woman is still living her robust lifestyle, she still is not responsible for going out there and killing the XYZ and bringing it home, or doing certain levels of farming. If she was doing this, the guy would do that, or, so a man could still respect a woman, even though she has a lifestyle that isn't in the kitchen. So, but nevertheless, here comes the misogyny. Even though you still out there being oracle, I expect stew as well. That's not my job. My job is to do the stuff that you don't want to do. And also the violent things as well. So, but that comes to a head when we talk about how men are being put into a certain position in society where we're not asked to go out there and be warriors. We're not asked out there to go kill something and bring it home. We just asked to have a high-paying job. And so there's ways where, even though it's not being seen that way, men do go out of their way when they are trying to be healthy. They do go out of their way to try to make sure that there's a stable situation at the house. So it's not the traditional be a warrior XYZ, but in today's society, it does formulate in having a W-2 or what's that, 1099 or whatever it is,
Well, that's the westernization of it all.
That's the westernization of it all. And so, but nevertheless, that would have to be sufficient, but it's still not seen as, because there's this whole situation of I see a person out there making more than you, and this is where the westernization, where the women come in at. I still see somebody making more than you, living a better lifestyle, taking their family on better vacations. You're not earning enough. You're not being a warrior enough. So on all sides, when we're dealing with how society goes here in the West, we really have to look at how both sides are being toxic. And at the same time, it's not a situation of whether, all men, or the majority of men who are being man and want to see things that a woman does. We're not being misogynist, man. Because if I got to take out the trash, if I got to clean the gutters, cut the grass, uh, that's what men do. And so, and likewise, I would just like the reciprocal. And I don't want to be called toxic because I expect my woman to be motherly and taken, caretaken for the home.
Yeah.
But hey, be that as it may, robust lifestyle or not, I want to see you come home and be that way. But she doesn't want to do that. She feels as though that's servitude and slavery. And so that's why she has that opinion. And other women that think like her think that way. But I think that is, like you said, conflated and misguided.
Yeah, I agree. People who talk like her have been sold a bag of goods that roles within a relationship are a constraint.
Mm-hmm.
It is, and where you connect that with masculinity is, in my opinion, most men who are living in their masculine energy and are traditionally masculine also believe in the notion of roles within a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, you deductive reasoning, you are now concluding that someone who is masculine is inherently toxic. But that comes from this idea that you believe that things such as roles and responsibilities that tend to fall along gender lines within a relationships are akin to some sort of a constraint. And in this day and age, to suggest that someone be okay with a constraint is inhumane and improper. And it's our responsibility to sort of combat that, because we ought to be living in a world free of said constraints, even though said constraints were never an issue to begin with. You must also remember that if you are constrained within the confines of this relationship, then so am I. We are both constrained and we are both adhering to particular roles. It just makes sense.
Exactly.
And at a certain point, people need to realize that maybe they're just not built for what they claim they want. And that's part of the cappery going on out here. She's 52 years old. She's reached the cutoff point, I feel. The likelihood that she is going to obtain what it is that she seeks, in my opinion, is low, unless she seeks it with a man older than her. But that will not happen because she doesn't fancy older men. So she's caught between a rock and a hard place. And the only reason why I bring that up is because I'm starting to feel as though relationship oriented people are like born and not made. In this day and age, I'm just not seeing it. I kind of feel like if you're built for it, it will happen for you. And it won't be a situation where I get into something with you and we have to sit down and have a whole discussion about roles and who does what and who does this and who fulfills this obligation and who's the person who is sort of in the position of leadership, who's the authoritarian. Like, people who are built for lifelong partnership and companionship, and it fits and there's compatibility and there's symmetry, no one's actually sitting down having those kinds of formal discussions. It's something that kind of happens organically because everyone understands that in order for this thing to be proper, in order for it to be successful, that's what's going to have to happen. So if you have all of these thoughts going through your mind of what you need and what has to happen in order for it to work for you, I feel as though there's a chance you're just not built for it. And so if you're constantly going through all of these different thought processes over toxic masculinity or lack thereof and what that even constitutes to me, that's an indication that you're probably somebody who is just designed for the extent of your life probably to be alone. You're probably just not designed for it. And when I say because everybody within relationships has formal discussions about how are we going to handle this, how are we going to handle education, how are we going to handle food, how are we going to handle bills and expenses, how are we going to handle religion, how are we going to handle all of those sorts of things like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about baseline stuff like I fulfill this basic role of caregiver. There's no need to have a formal discussion like that. If you have to sit down with someone who you're vetting for partnership to have a formal discussion about who's the caregiver and who's the one that works or who's the one that cooks or who's the one that does the heavy lifting physically, it's an indication that one of those individuals is not built for this, because those are natural inclinations that are going to formulate as a result of who you are, where you come from, and what your sensibilities are. And for her to speak like that tells me that she is lacking in those general sensibilities, and therefore she might have to come to terms with the fact that she might not be built for something that she claims she's looking for. Especially when you're that age and you're saying that you prefer to do younger men because they're not going to give you all of that other stuff. It is what it is. But like you, I feel like you can be robust and still be fulfilled within the confines of a relationship with someone who believes in and adheres to true masculine qualities. And for her to not understand that is emblematic of the way a lot of women think these days, but nevertheless off balance.
1,000, man. So, let us know down in the comment section, y'all. What are y'all's thoughts on what Tracee Ellis Ross had to say on this? You guys feel like she's on point? We're the ones off base? That, hey, toxic masculinity is running rampant. It is destroying the game. It's destroying the dating pool. So date younger? Like, I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if that adds up, but let me know down in the comment section, guys. Please, love to hear it.
Yeah. And in order for us to do that, we're all going to have to be aware of what the actual definition of toxic masculinity is.
Yeah.
We can't operate off of the fake definition. We got to make sure we're using the real one.
100.
Good luck to you, Miss Ross. Unfortunately, she speaks for a lot of women, I think. So,
Yeah, and I'm gonna check out this Obama podcast. I didn't know it was a thing, so I got to see what the hell she's doing on there, bro. It's kind of is she doing a Jada Pickett? Hopefully, it's more progressive.
Yeah, I hope not. I hope it's not. Jeez, Lou.